Good morning, everyone. It's a fantastic, great to see everyone today, and welcome to the Onward session on growing together, unlocking productivity through business collaboration. Now, we all know that SMEs absolutely form the backbone of UK PLC, but they have long faced barriers towards boosting their productivity by adopting new technology, investing in R&D and improving management. And that's what we're going to be discussing today. We're going to explore how we can build a thriving economy through greater collaboration between businesses big and small. And I'm absolutely delighted to welcome a fantastic panel today. We have Paul Scully to my left, who is the Minister for Tech and Digital Economy. Paul is also MP for Sutton and Cheam. Just to Paul's left, we have Monica Arino, who is the Director of Public Policy for Amazon UK. And then on my far right, Paul Bedford, who is the Director of Policy and Sustainability for Deliveroo. And then Anthony Impey, who has been the Chief Executive of Be The Business since 2020, Paul. I think that's correct. Anthony, I think that's probably right. So if I may, what I'd like to do is kick off with an introduction from the speakers. And Paul, Minister, perhaps I could start with you.
Thanks, Kate. It's lovely to be here. So this is already my second fringe of the day. So, that's schoolboy era of having morning sessions. But I know people will be drifting in and out because this is such an important issue to talk about. SMEs, small businesses, are the absolute lifeblood of the UK economy. 99% of businesses are SMEs. I had the pleasure of being, for 2.5 years, Minister for Small Business. As I always said, not the small business minister. At my height, that's really important, and especially when I had Kwasi Kwarteng as my boss. As tall business minister, I was very careful to point that out. But there are a lot of barriers for SMEs. There's a lot of issues that we need to make sure that we can recapture as a Conservative government. We can recapture the fact that we are the party for business. We are the party for small business. And I think you start that by really entering the mindset of a small business owner. Because a lot of people say that, a lot of MPs say they've been in business. Actually, what they've been doing, they've been moving around money and investing in businesses. Slightly different mindset from an entrepreneur, small business owner, which is something that I did for 25 years, running small businesses. So I have gone without so that I could pay my staff their salaries. I've risked capital, I've risked my home to invest in my business. That's a very different, as I say, mindset. So we need to make sure that we can tackle productivity. First thing we do is reward risk, making sure through the tax system that we can better understand small business owners, that you can't just flatten the tax rate expecting that to minimise the differences between being self-employed and employed. I think there should be a difference there because of that risk appetite. In terms of one of the questions I've got here about incentivising technology adoption, when the Prime Minister was Chancellor, he recognised rightly that we had a productivity gap in this country. The fact that if we could increase our productivity to the level of Germany, we'd add £100 billion to our GDP. Significant amounts. Two areas that he identified: digital take-up from small businesses and structured management techniques. So what he basically conceived, which I delivered part of the programme, is the Help to Grow programmes. So Help to Grow management, the structured management technique, Help to Grow digital. But here's the rub. Where the Help to Grow digital failed, frankly, was because it was duplicative of what other businesses were already doing. You had the likes of Sage, Xero, QuickBooks and the like, who were already discounting and in some cases giving away for free accountancy packages because making tax digital was coming up. We then scrapped Help to Grow digital because it wasn't taking off the way we wanted to, and then we put off making tax digital. So those companies no longer had the impetus to discount their products. So we actually dropped the ball slightly, and we've got to learn from that. That's fine. Governments do that. It's not a political thing. It's just governments do fail. But we've got to learn from that, because if we don't learn, what governments then do is they go back into their shell, low risk. Let's not upset the apple cart for fear of failure. Whereas the whole point about small businesses is they do put risk They do risk, as I say, and they have a different risk appetite. So government should continue to try these things, but work with other businesses. And Amazon's a really good example. So Monica and I have known each other for quite a while, not just in my tech role now, but when I was in that business role, Amazon Marketplace is something that actually supports small businesses, and it's important that we get that relationship right. And Monica knows my views about putting the digital markets bill through to make sure that you don't get entrenched power, so that small businesses can flourish. But as long as you get that collaboration right, which on the whole does work, then you can really get the benefits of both big businesses and small businesses, and that sort of fits in with the procurement as well. Because one thing that national government and local government and regional government tends to do, they will always go to a prime, a big business, to tender, because it's easier for them to administer rather than go straight to the SMEs. What you then find is that procurement can be up to 40% higher in terms of cost for the taxpayer. So through our procurement bill, then we're trying to level that out, but that will also be increasing the ethos and approach of procurement managers within government to be able to cope with a wider range of SMEs. Final thing, if I may, because it just says, talk about regulation here. Overall aspect for me as a government minister would be some regulation is good. Some regulation gives people, good regulation gives businesses confidence, it gives consumers confidence, it helps to develop markets. Bad regulation is just a cost of business. So actually, for those of you that are running businesses, we all want to have this bonfire, red tape, etc., etc., etc. Please give me specifics. Say, get rid of that, keep that. That's what we need. I'll leave it at that.
Minister, thank you. I think you've all heard it here. Please come to Paul with any concerns around regulation on businesses.
What have I done?
Open up the floodgates, Paul. Well done. Monica, if I could come to you.
Thank you, Kate, and good morning, everyone. It's really great to be here. Thank you for the invitation. The topic is unlocking productivity through business collaboration. So I thought I'd give two Amazon examples that are very live at the moment of things that we are doing to work with businesses, and particularly small business. Of course, we have a big brand. We're a big business. But as you said, Paul, we, in addition to having 75,000 employees and being a retailer and a content provider and a device manufacturer, we support over 100,000 small businesses sales through our marketplace. There are about 350 of those in your constituency, as you know, and they export to the world. In fact, your top export destination is the US, followed by Germany and France. So my first example is about how we can sort of encourage and help more small business develop e-commerce expertise. We did a study last year that identified that if we could get 70,000 more small business to export, we would drive 9.3 billion, of economic value, which is really, really significant. And that's because it's lower cost for them. They build resilience. And this is an area, e-commerce channels, that has historically been fairly overlooked by policymakers. So what we have done is partner with the Institute of Exports and also other online marketplaces, as well as small business associations like the FSB. And we've launched an e-commerce commission that will run for 2 years. It's at the moment now doing field work to try to identify what more can government do to encourage small businesses to take up e-commerce. That's working really well. I'm really excited about that example, and I think it's one where we can really support and push trade and get more people exporting. My second example, and I want to keep my initial remarks short, relates to innovation. Now, innovation is obviously at the heart of everything we do. We have 4 R&D centres in the UK, one in Edinburgh. I'm visiting it later today. The last one in Wales, we opened it last December, and over 2,500 people doing here research that we then export and use globally. And I think, Anthony, you probably will cover your report. I think it's being published today. But a fantastic report. We worked with you on it, and one of the recommendations was that to try to sort of spur innovation and tech diffusion, large companies should do more to share what makes them successful. And that's really important, and it sounds very simple, but it isn't. And we heard exactly the same thing a year ago here in Manchester, where we ran an event near the Manchester airport, and we were also asked, what more can you do to support local businesses? And so we thought about that, and you know, as you've noted, Paul, we have seen, and there is a very sort of big ecosystem of support of small businesses. We have also our own training program that we launched during the pandemic. It was good. It wasn't great, to be honest, and we felt, you know, there's a little bit of fatigue. You've mentioned Help to Grow, and the digital aspect of that. That was a little bit similar to our program, and I think those online programs aren't always as great or as impactful. So what we have decided to do is something very different. At the moment is in pilot, started also here in Manchester. We call it the Amazon Innovation Accelerator. And it is really very simple. We take small businesses from the area onto our sites, we pull up the curtain and we show them around. They meet with our business leaders, they run the project and the program. They discuss what makes us successful, how we make decisions, how we innovate. We show them our processes, we take them around our sites, we show them our robotics, we do business management. We've done some mentoring over the summer, and we're going to Birmingham next. We're oversubscribed, it's been really, really successful. And I think what we have found that it's really, really great about that approach, it's that it's very practical, it's very targeted, you're engaging with businesses on the ground directly, and it's another example, something that if proved successful by the end of this year, we hope to take nationally. So I just want to give those two examples as areas for trade and innovation where we think partnership between the private big business and small businesses at a local level, using our sites, over 100 of those sites over the country, kind of bottom-up approach, is, you know, both exciting and potentially a huge opportunity for others. Thank you.
Monica, thank you. That sounds very exciting, that collaboration between big and small, but really on the ground. Paul, can I come to you next?
Yeah. Thank you very much for having me here. I think it's apt to be talking about how to support small businesses in Manchester. This is where Deliveroo has our small business hub. We've got about half a mile away, 100-odd employees dedicated to supporting some of the 60,000 restaurants and grocery partners we've got on the platform in the UK, particularly the smallest ones who are larger, or make up a bigger proportion of that number. I'm hoping everyone in the room is an avid Deliveroo user. If you're not, I will give you a very brief run through of what the platform is, how we support small businesses, and again, like Monica, give a couple of examples of what that means in practice and where there might be things to do. So Deliveroo is now 10 years old, UK founded and headquartered company. We listed several years ago. The kind of founder story was our founder, Will Shue, was a banker. Bankers work late, so he used to get an allowance for takeaways, and working in London, thought London has great restaurants, but the takeaways aren't as good. So how do I provide a logistics function to allow the great independent restaurants in London to offer takeaway services to people who hadn't had them before? So that's where the company started, and we now represent most of the restaurant sector, and I can see my competitor in the room from Uber Eats as well, so you'll have other platforms doing that. But essentially we're an online marketplace providing the logistics services to connect restaurants and grocers up and down our high streets with consumers in their local area. And again, the average delivery is around sort of a mile or so. So that's sort of the geography that we're talking about. And then on productivity, there's one really key way that the service like Deliveroo helps support restaurant partners and grocery partners who hadn't previously provided any delivery service. And the first is by offering this service that they only pay for if a consumer uses it, so there are no fixed costs for our partners, they're able to utilise the capacity in their kitchens far more effectively. So where a small restaurant, and we've got great examples in Manchester, had before Deliveroo been constrained by the number of covers it could serve that evening, now actually if you've got capacity to serve double that, you've got your out-of-home sector now able to do that. So that's where platforms like Deliveroo are helping to support the productivity in our kitchens and restaurant kitchens up and down the country. On top of that, and again, in terms of some of the things that we do as a platform to continue to lean into this and support it, we also offer training courses now to our restaurant partners. Again, recognising particularly the small businesses, great chefs and people get into restaurant ownership because they love cooking and they want to serve. A lot of them don't have that business background necessarily, so we're leaning into this by providing free access to online courses to support marketing, business, accounting 101, etc. So that's on the sort of labour side of productivity. And the other big thing, and we are an app, we are online, but we give partners kit, and we are, for a lot of small businesses and up and down high streets, some of the first experience they have using technology. So they'll have the tablet, they'll start working with us to understand meal and prep times and to start automating and thinking about how they manage their processes. And that's always quite a good, way in to sort of the gateway drug, if you want an analogy elsewhere, into sort of tech embracing. If you have this Deliveroo tablet and then you start getting data insights as well, that you can sort of start thinking, okay, this dish is doing really well on this evening, how do I start thinking about that? And that's again where we partner with our restaurants so they understand that profile. So that's on the capital side, leaving aside the amount of R&D investment that Deliveroo itself does as a company to innovate on our product. So that's a bit of background about the company and again how we support our sort of small and medium-sized businesses up and down the country. And I think we might get onto this in a second, but if we think about what our partners are telling us in terms of how can we sort of support and improve innovation and productivity across the country, I think one thing that we do hear quite loud and clear is for them to invest, there needs to be a kind of stable environment in which to have confidence to do that. So again, very glad Paul's on the panel, and we spoke about this yesterday at a separate round table, but helping kind of have a stable environment for all restaurants to invest in is actually quite a key thing for them to start thinking about how they're going to spend more money, making themselves more productive and embracing tech.
Paul, thank you. We've heard from two big businesses who work and support small businesses. Anthony, you sort of come from the opposite end, really, sort of in terms of how you support the small businesses in improving their performance, looking at their risk profile, which the Minister has mentioned, which I think is a very important part of that small business journey. I just wondered if you could talk a little bit about what you've been doing.
Thank you, Kate, and great pleasure to be here on this panel this morning. Just some background, I'm Chief Executive of Be The Business. We're an independent charity that works with businesses, large and small, in order to address the challenge with UK productivity. And I think it's helpful just to sort of take a step back and quantify the challenge that we are looking at. Really, since the financial crisis in 2008, UK productivity has been pretty much flatlining. And the work that has been done around this often talks about this long tail of low productivity businesses. So within the UK, the good news is that we have some of the world's most productive businesses, but we have a large majority of businesses that don't have that same level of productivity, and that's what means that our productivity in the UK is underperforming that of our peers within the G7. Now, at Be The Business, we're obsessed by understanding this problem and this challenge. And recently, we did a survey of small businesses in the UK and small businesses across the G7 group of countries. And what we found was something very, very interesting, which was, well, first of all, we found out what the ONS tells us frequently, that actually in the productivity league table, the UK is right there at the bottom alongside Japan and a long way behind productivity trailblazers like the US and Germany. But the good news is that in terms of confidence levels, so the confidence levels of UK small business leaders and UK entrepreneurs, we perform really well. And actually we are above average in terms of our performance, in terms of confidence. And I think that is really, really good starting point, because you need to have confident business leaders in order to drive change within those businesses and within our economies. Now, the problem is that the confidence of the small business leaders isn't matched by capability. So our research showed very, very high levels of confidence levels, but relatively low levels of intention to invest in leadership and management skills and digital skills, things that the Minister has highlighted as being crucial to UK productivity. So actually, if we want to understand the problem with UK productivity, this gap between confidence of our small business leaders, fantastic foundation to build on, and the capabilities that they have. And so I think that is a very good way to understand the challenge that we're facing. Now, the good news is that the size of the prize is enormous, that actually if we improve the productivity of small businesses in the UK by just 1%, it would add £95 billion to the UK economy over 5 years. So a big prize to be had if we get this right. And I think there are three things that I often think about when we think about particularly the challenge of getting digital to work in small businesses. The first is that the failure rate of tech adoption within small businesses is very, very high. More than half of technology investments by small businesses fail. They deliver no return on investment, 53% to be precise. And by improving the level of tech adoption would have a substantial impact on the success of technology, because if you buy technology and it delivers benefit to your organisation, you're going to spend more money on technology. But the inverse is true. If you spend money on technology, it doesn't deliver a return, you're not going to spend money on it in the future. So that's the first point. The second is this collaboration between large and small businesses, I think, is absolutely crucial. And Monica's talked about the superb work that Amazon already do in this field, the Innovation Accelerator, the Small Business Accelerator that Amazon also run, are great examples of that combination of big businesses sharing their expertise in order to drive the performance of small businesses. And the final thing that I just want to mention, and then I promise I will stop speaking, Pete, is that the UK is a technology powerhouse. You know, if you look at our tech sector, we're right up there amongst world leaders, alongside USA and China in terms of our technology leadership. We are an absolute powerhouse in AI and generative AI, leading the way across the world. And I just think there is a massive opportunity to take that global leadership that we have amongst some of the world's best technology businesses, and for that to be applied amongst small businesses across the UK. And I think that is the opportunity that we have here in this country. And I'm really, really keen to sort of build on that and hear from other panellists as to what they think of that idea. Sorry, Kate.
No, Anthony, thank you. I think incredibly interesting, and I think this confidence thing is so important. If you're in a business, you're starting a business, you're running a business, you know, that level of confidence and that ability to look at the risk and decide what risks you are able to take, I think is important. So I suppose as Chair's prerogative, if I may, I'll ask the first question, if I may, which is, when you're looking at innovation, what are the barriers that you think that both large and small businesses are experiencing? And Monica, given that you've been working quite a lot with small businesses, I'd just be very interested in coming to you first, if I may.
Yes, of course. Well, thank you, and I love kind of, Anthony, your enthusiasm about the potential for the UK, which we agree with. I think the low awareness of what's out there and what's available, the sort of the risk appetite. People also are kind of time constrained, right? When you're a small business, these are the businesses that we've met. They're very impressive businesses, very impressive people with kind of limited time. So the support and the sort of collaboration is to recognize those and be very targeted. One of the things that we're finding with the accelerator at the moment, which incidentally is focused precisely on that long tail that you've mentioned. So it is not aimed at high growth, advanced manufacturing, life sciences. It's very much based at local established businesses. Some of them have been in business for 30, 40 years, and you know, they haven't kind of done that technology adoption at a rate that perhaps sort of facilitates that support. So I think initial lessons for policymakers are a lot about moving away from the sort of central top-down reliefs or grant schemes and doing much more of a bottom-up approach, almost leveling up R&D or innovation in that sense, where you partner with the local businesses and almost involve the large businesses that do the knowledge transfer in the design of those local R&D policies. I think that is essential. There's also kind of an awareness barrier. When I've mentioned the e-commerce kind of channels and the boost for e-commerce, I think there's kind of low awareness and a perception that it's very difficult to trade. Consumers think they're paying fees that actually they're not paying. We did an internal survey and asked people, why aren't you kind of buying cross-border more? Like, I don't want to pay fees. None of those consumers that we surveyed had been subject to any fees whatsoever. It was just a perception. So I think raising that sort of awareness, and again, governments can perhaps do more there to signpost where that support is available kind of at local level.
Paul, I think you've heard from the panel that actually there's a huge sort of opportunity and enthusiasm for the future of this. As a government minister, when you're sort of sitting and thinking about and talking to businesses, and I know you go out and spend a lot of time talking to businesses, both big and small, what are the things that come back to you in terms of this barriers for innovation? What do you hear that you feel is something that, as a government minister, that you can really progress that element of the collaboration?
So I think this, it's as Monica said. It's first of all, it's knowledge, awareness, and actually connecting people. It's sort of for making sure whether it's a cluster for different businesses, whether it's accelerators, and incubators that bring people together. That's the sort of solution to the problem that people have, which is, where do I go and get this stuff? How do I go and get this sort of stuff? And so if you're looking at smaller businesses, we put £12 million into digital growth grants through Eagle Labs, Barclays Eagle Labs, and what that does is that that focuses 80% on businesses outside London. Really important. You talked about levelling up. That's very, very important, because there is a good ecosystem in London. None of it's perfect, but it's better than most parts of the country. So it's important that we give everybody the opportunity to innovate. And it's about bringing together peer-to-peer networks so that they can talk to other businesses that are going through the same issues, and mentoring. So Anthony and Be the Business is such an amazing organisation that I was pleased to work with when, again, in my business role. When you have mentoring, which is not Richard Branson at the end of the phone, you don't need that. Actually, what you need is someone maybe a year or 2 years ahead of you that's gone through. Peer-to-peer network is people that are going through the same process. Mentors someone that's just gone through that, or maybe a few steps ahead of you. And that's what, again, the Help to Grow management scheme does, bringing the structured management techniques. It allows you to go to have a course which is partly online, partly offline. A lot of people say, I haven't got the time to do that. When someone says that, it means it's not important enough for you, frankly. It is important, because it's 95% positive rating that the businesses have gone through that. They have been learning things in the first session that they put into practice in their business, and they're highly, highly more productive as a result of that. So there's lots going on there, but that is listening to those businesses, talking about where to go and get that support.
Thank you. Paul, when you're working with your group of suppliers, and you're looking at your supply chain and your partners, how when they come to you, do they come to you with problems? Do you have that round table conversation about what innovative solutions that you can help them support? How do you work with your partners in that way?
Great question, and I think with over 60,000 partners, we don't have a round table with all of them, and there'll be sort of
good round table though.
Well, quite would be entertaining. Probably very good food, I'd hope, as well.
Yeah,
when you've got that many coming along. I think when we're engaging them, again, it depends on the slight level, and we'll clearly have deeper relationships with some partners who want to use us more, and for whom the out-of-home sector is a bigger proportion of their business. But again, the advantage of a platform like Deliveroo, you sort of plug and play. So if you only sell one meal that evening, that's what you want to do, that's fine. Others will invest more into the out-of-home side of their business. So again, with those, there'll be a lot more investment, and you'll find such a range. I suppose it's sort of we're present across the whole country in sort of the large cities and towns, and we just do have a very diverse range of different businesses that will reflect the different characters of our high streets up and down the UK. So I think we do, with some of the sort of national brands, have dedicated conversations. There are sort of structured processes where we'll have quarterly discussions at senior levels to go through quite detailed operational processes. And again, for Deliveroo, and the advantage for partners is the data insights that the platform can then, and use of the platform can then bring them to help them understand either what sort of new products to bring to market, potentially where else they might want to open. One of the things that we've done as a company is invested in dark kitchens, is I think what they're colloquially known as, but they're the delivery-only kitchens that tend to exist out of town. It's a way for Deliveroo pays for the capital expense of fitting these kitchens, and then our partners sublet them. But it's a way for certain restaurants to go and test the water in certain markets. That's another area when we're looking at how to sort of support innovation and growth, where we're able to then use that data that we've collected on just the sort of consumer market to say, hang on, we think you might be really good here. And there's a great brand, Samuku, sushi in Manchester again, who are in our Editions kitchens here. You should try them, they're great. The udon noodles were fantastic. I had them the night before last. But again, that's another way of saying, hang on, we have an understanding of what will work. There's a bit of a gap in the market here. That's the sort of conversation that we can facilitate.
So that's exciting. It's that data, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's using that data, that sort of data-driven evidence that will then really sort of innovate and evolve those businesses. I mean, Anthony, you know, when you are supporting the small businesses, you know, what do you think is required in terms of sort of that incentivization to adopt that technology, to look at that data? Because you said something that I thought was really interesting. You talk about the confidence, but you also talk about the capability, and it's that capability gap, particularly around early adoption of technology. How do you encourage to make that leap and to use that data effectively?
Well, so I think there's a couple of things there, and just picking up something that Paul said about the different requirements in small businesses. I think very often we use the term SME quite carelessly because we kind of think, oh well, that's you've got big business and you've got SMEs, and the fact of the matter is that SMEs is an incredibly diverse and complex marketplace. So the first step, I think, is to recognise the complexity, that it's not just one big SME market of businesses that employ 1 to 249 people, but it's hundreds, thousands, maybe tens of thousands of different microsectors within that title, that category that we use. So I think there's the recognition of complexity, I think, is really important. I think the other thing that I think is really key to this challenge is behaviour change. And if David Halpin from the Behavioural Insights team was here, he would describe this much more eloquently than I can. But I think what's really key for any kind of behaviour change is that you've got to be able to make a small investment and see some return from that investment. And so I think, and this is where the role of big companies like Deliveroo, like Amazon, can play such an important part, because the opportunity, the ability for small businesses to try technology a little bit and see what return it can deliver is almost the first step on the journey that we need small businesses to take in order to adopt technology. And I think what you were saying, Paul, about some restaurants trying out takeaway service and maybe doing a few meals and then investing more and more, I think is a really good example of the kind of behaviour change that's crucial to driving technology investment. Technology investment isn't a binary thing. You don't go from not having any technology in your business to having technology in your business. It's like this progressive process where you have to continually invest in technology, and you might have 10, 20, 30 different types of technology in your organisation. But crucial to this, it's crucial to your question, Kate, or the crucial answer to your question is we've got to encourage businesses to take that first step. If we can do that, we get into this cycle of continuous change.
And Paul, how do we encourage businesses?
So a really good example about the prototypes and allowing people to look at the dark kitchens and invest and start that process. And same way with meanwhile spice spaces and the high street pop-up stores and those kind of things. But as Anthony said, small businesses are a wide range, and you can go right up to tech companies and aerospace companies, for example, that are small businesses that are feeding the primes, the big companies. And so that's where clustering comes in. So you in the Midlands, where you've got a thriving aerospace industry, you have the Midlands Technology Centre there, the MTC, where if a small business wants to look at investing in additive manufacturing, what you and I might call 3D printing, but of big aircraft parts, it's pretty expensive. You don't buy a bit of kit there, in the millions. So you've got to get it right. What the MTC has, they've got space with a few different bits of kit that you can try them out, make your things, and then decide which to invest. Similarly with semiconductors, where we're putting £1 billion over the next 10 years to invest in infrastructure to make sure we can protect our semiconductor industry here, both design and manufacture. When it comes to manufacturing, you're talking about 10, 20 billion pounds to set up a fabrication plant, a fab. and you won't have any income for 3 to 5 years while you're building it. So you've got to get it right. And for smaller companies that are looking at design to feed into those, again, you can go to the Royce Institute and the Imperial College. You can go to any number of places, and we'll work on more in the first compound cluster in South Wales, the first compound cluster in the world, where people can come up with an idea, and they can go in, and over a day they can literally come out with a product, a prototype that they can then say, that's what I want to invest in. I've learned what I want to do. I know what I want to do.
It's bringing people together.
Yeah,
It's
totally.
absolutely
Totally.
key. Listen, this is brilliant. Thank you. I'm going to open up for questions now from the floor because I can already see fantastic, brilliant. Can I suggest that we take them in threes, panel, if you're comfortable with that, and then we can try and get as many in as possible. So if I could go with the gentleman, I'll go sort of this way first. Gentleman here, then the gentleman here, and then this gentleman here. So you first, if I may. Oh, we've got some mics. Thank you.
Hi there, my name is Jonathan Smith. I'm a member from Kettering. I work in the cybersecurity sector doing a business that primarily helps small and medium-sized businesses. My question is that one of the difficulties running a small business is often that you need to know a lot of things about a lot of things. And that one of the most successful programs the government has had in cybersecurity has been the Cyber Essentials program, which is an optional program that is not required, it's not mandated legislation, that government has provided a framework that businesses can do, and then it's provided and advised by private businesses who are generally private certification bodies. Do you think this model of optional guidance that is certified and is the government lending its trust to a way of doing things is a way that can be rolled out to other areas? Data protection is one that springs to mind where there's a lot of fear and doubt among small businesses. But I'm sure there's other areas that I'm not necessarily as big an expert on. So I'd love the panel's thoughts on that. Thank you.
Jonathan, thank you.
Thank you. Lord Lee, I'm interested in the relationship between small businesses and much larger ones like Amazon. The FTC has just announced an investigation into monopolistic and monopsonistic behaviour by particular Amazon. And SOMO has revealed that Amazon charges £23.5 billion in fees and service charges to businesses. And Amazon is still not collecting VAT on Chinese goods delivered by so-called UK companies. So do you think the time has come for the government to investigate the relationship and in particular to revisit digital services tax?
Thank you, Lord Lee. And the gentleman here. I think most of it's to you.
Thank you. I'll stand up as the other gentleman stood up.
Thank you.
I might shock you with what I'm going to say to you now, that I started my company 37 years ago. Small company. I've been highly successful, but not because of any of the initiatives that you've indicated today. In fact, it's the opposite. I believe in honesty, fairness, justice, and levelling up. Those words don't apply in industry today. There is no levelling up whatsoever. In fact, everything's been stacked against small businesses. I work for a massive corporation. I won't say who they are. They're massive. I was invited to go to the Houses of Parliament to have lunch. Ironically, the person I sat next to was a small business minister. I was representing a very large corporation. So the difference between the two is enormous. But small businesses aren't treated fairly at all. They never have been in our country. This is manna from heaven, listening to particularly what Paul Scully has been saying today. I think it's a massive change that you need to adopt. It isn't some small initiative. And all the initiatives you've said are good. But when you get to the people that have actually got the power in this country, you're talking about institutions like HMRC and the Treasury. They adopt a totally different standpoint, a totally different value. They see the life differently. They don't see it in any way that you guys see it at all, or what I've had to put up with. I've only been successful despite the levels of dishonesty I've come across, the immorality that I've come across. It is quite shocking. I'm very happy to give you my card. I can give you a 20-page report that proves every word that I've said.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Paul, could I suggest that maybe you take the first two, which is the Cyber Essential programme, and then the point about
Digital services tax.
Exactly, digital services tax. And then perhaps the rest of the panel could come in on that levelling up and fairness, which I think is, and also people, I think, is really what you're also referring to, and the culture point as well. Perhaps I could start off with you, Paul.
And then I can go.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So, Jonathan, yeah, absolutely. Really good point about having that framework. I think that's exactly the right way to do what government should do. I always talk about the fact that it should be three things that government should be doing. First of all, it should be helping businesses, but I always accept the Ronnie Reagan's 9 most feared words of the English language. I'm here from government, I'm here to help. So how do we actually do things that benefit businesses? That's what I was talking about, regulation before, but setting up frameworks exactly as you describe. We don't have to do everything, which is point number 2. How can we back out of your lives and make you, the wealth creators, the job creators, the opportunity creators, crack on and be able to run successful businesses? And the third thing is, by backing out people's lives, how do we convene, use our convening power and signpost? So we can build a framework, and we don't need to deliver everything, though, as a government. That helps growth management. The great thing about it, it's delivered by business schools, it's business leaders. Government set it up. Government pays for 90% of it, but government doesn't run it. It's business leaders that run it. So having those kind of frameworks for qualifications, whether they're digital, cyber, technology, whatever, is absolutely the right way to go. Howard, in terms of digital services taxes, I think, look, we obviously want a level playing field for big businesses, for Amazon and other countries, other businesses. I mean, you're talking now, that's why I was talking about digital markets, Bill, about looking at entrenched power, because Amazon does amazing work for small businesses, for individuals, but there is that entrenched power and there is that risk. You've got, I think your turnover is about the same size of Israel's GDP. So you're now talking about companies with the same power and spending power as countries. In terms of digital service tax, though, in level playing field, I would like to see something like that work alongside a total revaluation of business, reframing of business rates. Because businesses are no longer measured their success on square feet. So actually, I think we need to have a different tax system. I know we had a fundamental review of business rates, which frankly wasn't that fundamental, but nonetheless, I think that needs to go hand in glove with the change.
Can I come in on those?
Yes, Monica. I'll come back on Lord Lee's question as well, and then we'll answer this gentleman's question as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you very much for those questions. They're really important questions. They're questions that sometimes we ask, so I'm very keen to sort of address them. I can't comment personally on the FTC case. I'm not close enough to it. I'm responsible for the UK. But what I would say is that retail is incredibly competitive, and some of the services that we offer as SMEs that sell through our platform are logistics services. So they can choose to ship with us, or they can choose to ship with, DHL or Royal Mail or others. And we offer those services for a fee, but the fees haven't increased over time, and they are very, very competitive. What I also want to kind of mention on tax, because I think there are a few misunderstandings on how much tax Amazon pays. We are top 15 total tax contributor in the UK, and we're in fact top 10 business rates contributor in the UK. Our business rates contribution have increased significantly over time. I've talked about having 100 sites in the UK. We have a very physical business, very physical presence for R&D centres, for corporate offices, warehouses. And a lot of those are in actual areas where historically kind of more deprived. So I'm very happy to follow up with some detail on our total tax contribution and business rates. That total tax contribution includes direct and indirect tasks, and we do collect and remit to HMRC VAT on behalf of businesses that are not established in the UK. Of course, you've identified a challenge, which is fraud, right? Where some sellers pretend to be here, but they're not, and it's very difficult for us and for HMRC to sort of address that. We're working very closely with HMRC to try to tackle that specific issue. On the digital services tax, we've been huge supporters of the OECD process, that it's trying to sort of address the international kind of taxation. That's been a process that the UK government has also supported, the Prime Minister himself, and we would like to see that come to fruition, because it will address, I think, some of these concerns that we have been discussing that are kind of global rather than just local.
Monica, thank you. Perhaps I could come to Anthony and to Paul just to touch on this people point, this fairness point, this culture point. I think because it is quite an important, it's a sort of quite an important part of, as you're growing a business and developing it, where are the risks just in terms of that sort of side of things as well?
Yeah, happy to start. I'm sorry to hear about that experience. I should also probably out myself as a former Treasury official before I came to Deliveroo, and I'm sorry if that was your perception of the department. When I worked there, we had utmost respect for businesses. They were the people paying tax, and that was crucially important to the Treasury in balancing its fiscal and economic goals. So it'd be good to talk to you, and I can happily badger my old friends from Treasury to say this is a perception that's being heard. But I suppose sort of, and it comes back to the role that, Anthony talked about the just diverse range of the small, medium business we've got. We've got lots across the country. Where companies like Deliveroo can support is actually by advocating on their behalf to government. We are a bigger company and have slightly more scale and ability to have teams to think about public policy issues and concerns that will worry our members. And actually, when Paul Scully was the small business minister, again, he will have. We met in that context, and he'll have met lots of people in the hospitality sector advocating on behalf of lots of smaller businesses in their supply chain. So I think that's a role that we can and do actively play in making sure that we understand what our partner restaurants and grocers want, and then actually advocate on their behalf. And again, one of the things that we're actively lobbying government at the moment is to pass on their concerns about business rates and the freeze that will expire in April. And actually, that's a big cliff edge for the 60,000 plus small businesses we've got. That's a thing that we again need to say. What are you doing? Kind of again appreciate there isn't much money and you need to make some tough choices, but the sooner you can give the clarity to business. So again, I think that's where we can step in and have quite an active role.
Anthony, I'm sure you hear about business rates a lot.
Yeah, actually, do you know, I was thinking about something different to business rates. So I'm going to dodge the business rates question a little bit, because I think your comment actually reminded me of, prior to running Be the Business, I set up and grew several small businesses. And about 15 years ago, I'd set up a cabling business that installed fibre optic cable into large developments, and we were working for one large, well-known contractor, and it was a big contract. It was about £400,000 of business for a business, and the business at the time was turning over about £2.5 million. So it was a big contract. It was a really big deal. We had a lot of resources invested in this project, and the payment terms were 60 days. And 60 days after the 60 days had expired, we were called into a meeting with this contractor who said, we'll pay you the final stage payment, but if you take a 10% discount on the overall price of the project, which is outrageous. And I think that speaks to your point around how small businesses are treated. And so I suppose, that is the conditions that I think lots of small businesses have grown up with. To some extent, I am really pleased to hear the Secretary of State talk about bolstering the late payments reforms, because I think that's such a big challenge for small businesses. And I think it signals part of a wider sea change that's happening towards the attitude of small businesses. Because I think that in the last 3 years, really since COVID, small businesses have taken maybe a bit of a backseat in the economy to being front and centre of people's thinking. And I think that is because in these new economic conditions in which we operate, the way small businesses function is critical to the success of the UK. We need to be more agile. We need to be more flexible. We must be more entrepreneurial as a country. And they're all the ingredients that small businesses have. And in my experience, the collaboration between big businesses and small businesses isn't a one-way process. It's not all about small businesses learning about all the good things that big businesses do, because I do believe that big businesses have got a lot to teach small businesses. But I'm seeing it go the other way. I'm seeing big businesses learning about how to be more entrepreneurial, because they have to be if they're going to survive in these new economic conditions that we find ourselves.
Paul.
So I'm optimistic.
Anthony, thank you. Paul, can I just come to you for a second? Because I know that you have been a real champion on late payments. This is a thing that you have taken very personal and and sort of progressive interest. And I just want to come back to you on this late payments point.
Yeah, absolutely, because that goes back to the trust that you were talking about. Because I mean, look, you're so many people, small businesses. You get to the point where you can talk about 30 days payment or whatever, but if you don't get your purchase order number for 2 months, then the 30 days starts. You know, whatever legislation you put in. So we have the prompt doesn't work. So prompt payment code, we were trying to extend that while I was there to make sure more businesses signed up to it. That's a voluntary code. It's a reputational issue. But then we need to kick people off when they're not doing it. That's the key thing. So that actually means something. So I'm glad that Kemi is acting on that. I think in terms of what you were saying, and you know, I'm sure Paul wasn't one of those people, but in Treasury and the rest of the government, I saw part of my role as reminding. Goes back to what I was saying about small businesses, that reminding the rest of the government that businesses aren't just units of economic activity. There is a person involved at the heart of that, taking those risks that I was talking about. And one great example of big businesses learning from small businesses. I used to, I had a consultancy business before I was elected, and I worked with the biggest McDonald's franchisee in the UK. And so as a franchisee with about 24 restaurants, then he went up to about 40. He was innovating. He was, and McDonald's themselves took his great examples that they ran out around the rest of the restaurants. So it's those small units of innovation.
Cool, thank you. I want to get some more questions in, if I may. So why don't we take the two here and then this gentleman here. So the lady in the front, great, would be first. Thank you.
I'm Bernie Muir, Surrey County Councillor, and from the neighbouring borough to you, Epsom and Ewell.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And I'm in the... I've had quite a few discussions with local businesses, and they've got a real workforce issue. One is actually number of workforce, but more importantly, appropriately skilled workforce. And the two things they comment on is... they don't think the education system produces the right type of workforce now, and the opportunities to reskill or upskill existing workforce. And so I'm interested in what your thoughts are and how we can address those issues. I mean, obviously we have an additional problem in Surrey where the cost of living and the cost of housing is, you know, people, you know, key workers, what have you, can't afford to be there, and it's, you know, we're trying to address that as well with the gross skills thing. Sorry, but that's not what I'm talking about.
What type of business was it?
There was a range of businesses that, you know, hospitality, retail, individual small tech businesses and what have you. They're all having a problem with, they've practically every business that I spoke to has got vacancies, and they are offering all sorts of things now, but even offering all sorts of incentives. They're getting 0 people applying for the vacancies.
Great question. Business only as good as its people within it. Skills and upskilling. Great question. Thank you. This gentleman here.
Okay. My name is Richard O'Connell. I'm the president of South Devon Conservatives. My brother and myself started a business in 1971. We did sell up in 2016. We were one of the largest in Europe when we sold up. We had 450 people. When we started, we, and the same as a lot of other entrepreneurs, we only knew about the product we were making. We knew nothing about business, about marketing or anything like that. And as we grew, of course, we needed more machinery, etc. And I drove a lorry for 12 months, not knowing that I needed a heavy goods vehicle license to drive it until somebody told me.
Didn't hear that.
But we just kept going, basically. But the problem is also more and more legislation now, because, of course, when we had rubbish or whatever, we just went to the tip once a week and chucked it all down the tip.
I want to give the panel a chance to answer.
So the problem is, really, when you start a business, where do you find all the information now? You've got pressure vessels, you've got PAYE, climate change levy. We need one page where you can just say, I bought a boiler, I bought a compressor, I bought this, what do I do now? And also, just on, if I may, on Monica's point, we were dealing with Chinese products, and they're self-certified, and a lot of the products that when we tested them, they didn't meet the self-certification. So I'd like to know how Amazon deal with that problem.
Thank you, Rich. That's very good. And then finally, the gentleman. I appreciate we're running out of time, so.
I'll try and keep it quick. My name's Sam. I'm the policy lead from the Employee Ownership Association. We represent businesses that are in a significant part owned by the employees, generally 25% or more. We've just commissioned a piece of research being launched later this month that's showing that actually employee-owned businesses tend to be more productive than other businesses, which is largely because the model unlocks particular business practices and business structures, flattening hierarchies to gain input from different parts of the organisation, a increase in effort from employees, those sorts of things. And so the conversation today has been a lot about innovation, but innovation, you can only innovate so much. So I'm wondering, unlocking productivity, is there much consideration from the panellists from your spaces on those additional things like business structure and business practice?
Brilliant, thank you. So we've got skills, we've got where do you go for information, and that unlocking productivity. So I just, if I may, I'm going to start with Paul, then going to Anthony, Monica, and then I'll finish with Paul. Just a couple thoughts on each of those, Paul.
Yeah, skills, we hear that a lot from our partners. It's a big challenge getting labour. It is difficult, and I think there's not much really we can sort of do as a platform beyond, again, support partners to be more productive where they can be, and again, sort of utilise their kitchens more effectively. But again, hear that, nothing constructive, I'm afraid, to offer on that. On where to find information, I think government did do a lot, and again, to plug former civil service colleagues, gov.uk is a lot better than it used to be as a landing page with information. So I'm not sure when you last looked, but I would have a look at the gov.uk page. There's also a role for us as businesses to help with our sort of 60,000 partners to distill information and to have another portal for them to access things they need to know. And we will quite often, when government produces a new regulation that affects the sector, again, reach out to our partners and distill it in a way that we know that they will engage with, because we've got a sort of familiar relationship with them and communicate regularly. On business structure point, nothing particularly profound to add beyond, I suppose, sort of from Deliveroo's perspective as a UK listed company, equity was quite an important part of the growth story of the company. So employees across the company at all levels got equity in the sort of first run up to IPO. And again, I think if I look at my experience and colleagues' experience in the company, having that joint share in the success of the company was a very important motivating factor in sort of encouraging people to work hard and to think and to innovate. So again, fully supportive of that, but appreciate the Deliveroo example is probably slightly more niche compared to other businesses in the economy.
Thanks, Paul. Anthony.
So I think the skills issue is something that you speak. Every business that I speak to, every business owner I speak to says that skills are in their top three challenges. So I think it's recognised as a major issue. One of the things that we're involved with is something called the Future Skills Coalition, which is really looking at how we re-energise the FE sector, the further education sector, in order to get the vocational skills that businesses so badly need. I think it's a long process to follow, and it's quite a complex issue. But I think there is a lot of focus on it because it's such a big issue. I mean, just a further thought on this is I was at a dinner the other evening, and somebody said, "Look, we've been talking about skills for a long time. Let's just digitise everything, and that's how we'll fix the skills issue." That is clearly not the solution, but I think it represents the frustration of business leaders. I really like the work the employer around employer ownership, and I think that is a form of innovation. It's about thinking differently about how your business operates, and I think. Again, a lot of business owners that I'm talking to, they're thinking differently about how they structure their organisation in order to tap into productivity. And Richard, I just wanted to applaud you on the fantastic success of your business. I think it's a real recognition of the resilience and determination and sheer endurance of small business leaders in this country. So congratulations.
Yeah, absolutely. Monica.
Thank you. I loved your question on skills. I wish we had another hour to talk about it. I will say three things. One, employers need to really put their money where their mouth is and invest in upskilling the workforce. We're doing that. We have fantastic programs where we upskill employees, pay 95% of tuition fees over 4 years, and for them to retrain and then do whatever they want with us or with others. Something I wish we could do more is transfer parts of the apprenticeship levy funds that we don't spend, over 30% last year, to SMEs. So we need to reform the apprenticeship levy. I was surprised it hadn't come up yet. We talk about it all the time, but one of the problems we have is SMEs can't spend the overhead in hiring and training apprentices, whereas we are very happy to support that process for clusters of SMEs. The current levy system doesn't allow us to do that. And then the final thing I said, as business, we need to adapt as well. So we've struggled with kind of identifying kind of labour shortages like every other business, and we've really adapted. We've just launched something which are term time contracts for people with children that only want to work during term times. They can have full-time jobs with us and not work at Christmas, holidays, or half terms. And you just have to to adapt. Product safety, really briefly. Customer trust is essential for us. We spend an enormous amount ensuring that people can shop on our site and trust what they get. And if they don't, that's really, really a problem. So we invest an enormous amount of resources and technology making sure that the products are safe. And that's vetoing who comes in the platform to sell first. And then when things go wrong, because sometimes they do go wrong and things go through the cracks, we're really acting quickly, working on those recalls, working with the OPSS. There's a product safety consultation at the moment from DBT, and we're working really well with the Minister and his team on that. But it's a really important topic.
Monica, thank you. I'm going to give the Minister the last word, but I'm going to ask, Minister, that in true politician style, you do it in about a minute.
Yeah, no problem at all. Like, firstly, skills is a really tight labour market. Hospitality coming out of COVID, 145,000 vacancies. Yeah. It's one of the big drivers of inflation, actually, after energy costs. So what we do about it, I've set up the Hospitality Sector Council, which is modelled on the Retail Sector Council, and I also have a Digital Skills Council in my new role as tech. What they do, they bring together government, academia and businesses to co-create solutions so that we can actually work together to do that. And actually, John Bumfrey from Amazon leads the skills work stream on retail. I'd also point you, since it's not far from you, to Kingston University, where what they've done this thing called the Future Skills Report. They looked at 2,000 businesses that they supply students into, graduates into, and they asked them what they want, what skills they want, and actually they talked about critical thinking, problem solving, totally different things than was expected and that was taught. So they now changed their entire pedagogy based on that report, to the point that Ofqual, they're worrying about how Ofqual are going to even accredit them. But it's really revolutionary. Where do you find your stuff? Growth hubs. There are 38 growth hubs around the country. They're different efficacy, but basically they are a one-stop shop for business needs. We don't advertise them nearly enough as a government. We should be doing more on that. In terms of share ownership and employee ownership, I think it's having a stake, isn't it? If you're going to invest a lot of money in people, training, recruitment, retention, actually giving them a stake, making them feel valued, whether it's share ownership or some other form, I think that's absolutely key. You have no business if you don't have good people.
Absolutely, Paul. On that note, I think that's so important. Collaboration, culture, risk, data, skills, people. Will you give the panel a round of applause? Thank you very much indeed.